Alright, with so many OLED monitors coming out, Corsair didn't want to be left out, so they shipped me one of their brand new 240Hz OLEDs to take a look at. But the question is this finally the best OLED monitor, or is it just a rebranded, overpriced waste of money? Well, there's only one way to find out, so grip your crotch with the force of God, because we're going in whether you like it or not. Now, what exactly am I talking about here? Well, I'm not even going to attempt to say the full name. Just know this is the Corsair 240Hz OLED monitor, and in terms of specs, we're talking about a resolution of 2560 by 1440, a refresh rate of 240Hz, a size of roughly 27 inches, a 16:9 aspect ratio, an MLAW OLED panel with a response time of 0.03 milliseconds, allegedly, and it should be G-Sync and FreeSync compatible. Now, in terms of a stand, yes, it comes with one, and it's actually excellent. In fact, I will tell you guys the build quality overall is a step above many other monitor makers. Now, in terms of ports, it does have two HDMI 2.1, one DisplayPort 1.4, and one Type-C with DisplayPort according to their website. Although what it doesn't mention is that on the right side, it has 4 additional USB slots and a Type-C, as well as a 3.5mm jack and a Kensington lock. So there's quite a bit of I/O on this thing, and it's actually in a really good, easy to use spot. Now, in terms of VESA mounting, yes, you can do that as well. So everything's looking good, and for a price of $850, well, that is very expensive for a monitor. You are getting a 240Hz OLED display, so depending on how good it performs, this could be one of the better purchases, as it is a little bit cheaper than some of the other ones out there. But does it perform? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. First, starting off with the color and just my impressions real quick. I will say in sRGB, I think it looks pretty dang good. However, when you swap it over to HDR, I think it honestly doesn't look that great. And this is something that's definitely an issue with every single WOLED panel that I've tried so far. Remember, this is a WOLED panel, even though it is technically MLA, so it is going to be a little bit better than their older stuff. But with it being WOLED, it does suffer from poor HDR color at high brightness levels, and that's something, as you'll see, I was definitely able to pick up. Now, in terms of the actual calibration, out of the box, it was actually very good. If you take a look, it does follow the EOTF curve pretty well, and the RGB balance was pretty good, at least in sRGB, although I was able to further improve it, and I will have my settings as well as ICC profile in my Patreon, which I will have linked in the description below. If you do have this monitor, I highly suggest picking it up, as it will make it a little bit more accurate. Now, if we do take a look at the HDR performance, ooh, this is where things get a little bit rough, guys. As you can see on the EOTF curve, it really doesn't follow it well at all. It's just kind of a mess, especially at the top there, and the luminance is just kind of all over the place. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Perhaps there was some sort of issue with the software itself, but actually I think this might be correct, as my experience in games was HDR wasn't too good. And then taking a look at the color volume, as you can see in sRGB over 140%, BT709 over 95%, DCI-P3, and over 64% BT2020. Honestly, that's not too bad, but the problem here, guys, is when we take a look at HDR, and this is something I've seen again with every single WOLED panel that I've measured so far, unfortunately, for whatever reason in HDR, and my theory is this might come down to the white subpixel unless there's something wrong going on here. Yeah, if this is true, we're talking about much lower color volume once you enable HDR. I'm not sure why that's the case. Again, I think maybe at the higher brightness levels, the white subpixel's kicking in too much, and it could be leading to a situation where the color is just negatively affected. But what about the brightness? This is very, very important for OLEDs. And here, as you can see, not too impressive. Unfortunately, it's coming in at 148 nits, which is close to the bottom of my chart when we compare it to other 1440p displays. But what about a 10% window? And here, it's actually not too bad, 692 nits. That puts it right in line with their Xeneon Flex, and that's actually closer to the top of the chart, at least with the displays that I've measured so far, although I think going forward, that's probably going to change pretty quickly. But moving on to a game, Battlefield 1, here we can see, ooh, this is where it's the most disappointing, and I think this is a problem with the HDR on this display. 339 nits is the lowest I've measured of any display, and as you can see, the Asus version of this same panel is nearly 3 times as bright, so that's a major issue with this display. But what about the minimum brightness? thankfully this is OLED, which means you're getting 0, and that gives you an infinite contrast ratio, leading to very good HDR in darker scenes. But what about the latency? And here, very, very impressive stuff here, guys. As you can see, it is actually tied as the fastest display I have ever measured. So if you're into competitive games, as you can tell, this is going to be very, very good. But what about the motion performance? And here you can see, and I do apologize, guys, as I didn't get as good of a picture this time around, but as you can see, it still does look very, very good. 240 hertz, it's absolutely incredible. It looks like there's almost no blurring going on whatsoever. And at 120 hertz, honestly, it looks to have better motion performance than the 240 hertz LCD at the right of the chart. But what about text clarity? That's very important if you're going to be using this for work. And here's where things, guys, ooh, it's not looking too good. As you can see here, there is a lot of color fringing going on here, and this is another situation where I think the white subpixel in the WOLED displays is causing a lot of problems, because with certain text, as you can see, there's a lot of like green and red fringing going on that is actually a lot worse at 1440p than it is at 4K, as you might see on their higher resolution TVs. But yeah, it's very apparent here, guys, and compared to Quantum.OLED, this is definitely a lot worse, at least compared to the version 2 Quantum.OLED displays that I've taken a look at recently. So not good on the text clarity. And also another thing that harms the clarity is, yes, they used a matte finish because they just couldn't help themselves. And of course, it leads to much worse color, it leads to much worse clarity, and overall, it just really destroys the image quality on this display to a degree that it's unbelievable to me that companies continue to use matte finishes on premium gaming displays. I get it if it's like a 60 hertz 1080p crappy office monitor. If you're in an office all day, maybe you don't want to see reflections behind you, but diffusing those reflections, in my opinion, doesn't really help anyway. But even if you think it helps, my God, the trade-off is so bad, it's not worth it. Oh, now in terms of viewing angles, it's actually very good. I didn't see any pink tinting or anything like that. But overall, my conclusions on this display is, if you're looking for a display primarily for competitive gaming and you're not going to be doing a lot of other stuff on it, this is actually a very, very good display for that. And it could be one of your top choices, as you saw with the motion clarity and input lag, it's absolutely insanely fast. So it's really, really good for that. And the fringing isn't as much of an issue in games. However, if you want this as a work display, or you're going to be doing a lot of work on it, or if you're going to be doing more single player gaming, I'm going to give this a hard no, because for those purposes, it's just not the right choice. It's too dim, it's too blurry. Now 1440p on its own, a lot of people do really like. I prefer 4K obviously, but 1440p, it ain't bad. It's a fairly high resolution still. The problem is when you pair 1440p with a weird subpixel layout and a matte finish, it just starts to get very blurry, and the text and everything just does not look good. So yeah, definitely not a good work monitor. Definitely wouldn't recommend it for single player gaming either, as it's just too dim, but for competitive gaming, it is really good. So it's up to you whether or not you believe this is going to be the right choice for you. You'll just have to check the current prices of competing monitors to determine which one is the best fit. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, roopro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out roopro on Amazon today.